The Thing is a 1982 American science fiction horror film directed by John Carpenter from a screenplay by Bill Lancaster, based on the 1938 John W. Campbell Jr. novella, Who Goes There? In the isolated wilderness of Antarctica, a team of American research scientists is startled when a helicopter appears at their base, firing at a seemingly harmless sled dog. After taking the dog in, chaos erupts as it violently turns on both the humans and other dogs, revealing itself to be a shape-shifting entity that can perfectly imitate its victims. As paranoia spreads and trust erodes, a skilled helicopter pilot, played by Kurt Russell, and the camp doctor rally the crew in a tense, bloody fight for survival against the relentless creature before it eliminates them all. So I watched The Thing a couple days ago, and right off the bat, I have to say that this is a terrific horror film. This is genuinely like a masterpiece, I would have to say. And I think what sort of surprised me when I was reading like other reviews for this film is that back when it was released, which was 1982, this is a pretty older film, it was released to negative reviews, mostly due to the visual repulsiveness that many critics faced. They thought it was too gory, too horrific, too disgusting. And of course, it didn't help that E.T., directed by Steven Spielberg, came out in the exact same year. So, of course, he was in competition with that film, and it really posed the question, are aliens friendly? Because, you know, E.T. had obviously a more positive and optimistic outlook on aliens. You know, all the kids were befriending the alien. Whereas in this movie, The Thing, it is a very nihilistic and oblique tone. And so you can really see two ends of the spectrum. But what I will not stand for, and this really like ticked me off when I found out about this, was that this film, The Thing, was nominated for a Razzie Award for the original score, I believe. Which, by the way, the score is, I think it's one of the more weaker aspects of this film, but it does not deserve a Razzie nomination. That befuddled me, to be honest. So not only did this film not receive any Oscar nominations when it came out, but The Thing was nominated for a Razzie. So I don't know what people were up to in the 80s, but it's kind of crazy that they didn't see what everybody sees in this film, which is it's incredible. So I mean, yeah, that sort of sucks, but ultimately this movie did gain a cult following, which means like, you know, people now like appreciate the film. It's spun off into, I believe it has a video game rendition, I believe. There's a prequel to this film. They sold merchandise, and it's really gained like obviously like a following. There's a huge fan base for this film now, which I think is really cool because this film is very highly original. It is based off of a novel, which I found out recently, but still, I don't think there's any film like this. It tackles so many genres as well. But the thing, and I actually want to go back to this whole cult following. I don't really like the term cult following. To me, it just suggests that, because when I think of cult following, I think of the most obvious following, which is for The Room. There's a huge cult following for The Room, and so I just think about a terrible film that gets appreciated for the wrong reasons. That's what I think of when I hear cult following. But it's just, I've said it again, the Thing is actually really good. I don't think it's terrible in any regard. The special effects are incredible. Apparently the dogs, so I mentioned before in the synopsis, it really starts from a dog, this whole chaos that ensues. And apparently the dogs used in the film are a combination of real dogs, which they, I believe, used for like sound, for like their barking and stuff, but they're also a combination of real dogs and a special effects puppet, which I think is very, very cool and leads me to my biggest praise for this film, and even critics have the praise as well. I mean, the prosthetics are so impressive. No matter how gory or disgusting they look, which to be fair, they are pretty disgusting, they're just so I don't even know the word. They're just kind of like so defined, I guess. Just so amazing and impressive how they I didn't check the budget for this film, but the design elements for this are just, they really take you into this whole parasitic atmosphere. So yeah, I just have to give a huge shout out to the prosthetics department, the CGI, of course, you know, what they, I guess, how they designed the thing, which, you know, I don't even know if it had like I don't know what the description was like in the novel, what it was meant to look like, but they really just made it super like original and just like abstract and unconventional, like nothing you've really seen before, which I thought was really nice. I also really like this story about this metamorphosis. Apparently, this film went through multiple directors and writers' hands, which, you know, isn't necessarily a good sign, because it could go through like, usually if a movie has a very rough pre-production process, the movie doesn't end up turning out to be very good, which might be another reason why the critics and audiences didn't really appreciate this film back when it released, because it had such a rough process making it. But overall, I think the story that they landed on, and you know, the script that they had, the script was, I think, written by Bill Lancaster. I think he made this other, he's written this film, and then he's written like another film. I forget what else he's written, but I'm pretty sure this is just one of two things he's ever written, and it's incredible, to be honest. I think the dialogue is very good, very nice. But yeah, and I will say though, and this is sort of a thing, I don't know if this is a flaw of the movie. Again, it is adapted from a novel, so I don't know if it was explained in the novel, but it's not explained in the movie. But sort of a flaw, I don't know. I wouldn't consider it a flaw, to be honest, the more I think about it. But something I've been grappling with is that there is not much info on the background of the parasites. I think the characters mentioned, I think they went to I forget when they went back to the Norwegian base camp, they saw or actually, sorry, they were basically seeing this like documentaries clip. This might be a bit of a spoiler, but I mean the movie's super old, so it doesn't really matter. But they were watching a documentary clip, and I believe they saw the Norwegians looking at inside the clip. The Norwegians were looking at this like this sort of like this not, I don't know, what do you call it when you like dig underground? I don't know. Basically, they saw something in the ground, and it looked like the remnants of a ship that landed, like a ship that crashed. So it's clearly that this is a very alien-like demonic parasite. That's what the novel in this movie is going for. But then again, we don't have much info on what the parasite is from, where it's like we don't know much about the scientific capacity of this parasite. And so I was really tackling, and I was thinking about this to myself, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? And especially because there's a moment where the doctor, he goes pretty crazy. He was at a computer screen, and apparently he was doing some like data research and results and stuff. And apparently I did the math on my phone when I was watching the film, in like 3 or so years, the parasite has the opportunity to take over the entire world's population. So, I mean, given the scale of what this parasite could do, I would have liked a bit more background on it. But then again, I think the fact that they didn't give that much info on the parasite might be a good thing, because we only know as much as the characters do about the parasite. And I think that's what I really like about this film. We don't know much about the characters themselves. That was actually like a complaint of when this film was released. You know, the poor characterization of these characters. You know, there's not much substance to them. We don't know much about their lives. Like, why should we care for them? But I like the fact that we're just sort of planted into this movie from the jump. You know, everything they experience from there, we experience with them. And even though we don't really know them that well, I think that's what makes it such a that's what makes it, I feel like, such a great dynamic, or such a great film that explores the dynamic between humans in general and human trust, and like like yeah, like trust and connection between others, because if I think if any of these characters like knew each other, if they were like childhood friends, for example, obviously things would play out differently. But the fact that they don't know each other that well, they're on a base together, they're on a camp, they're in this very isolated, claustrophobic atmosphere, and they just have to learn to trust each other. I think that's just what makes it such a more incredible film. So I like that we don't know much. Essentially, we don't know much about the parasite or about these characters once we start this film. Um, and yeah, I mean, this is definitely a film I need to see more than once. It's definitely something you have to see multiple times, not just because it is so good, but because the entire thing about this parasite is that it could be anyone. The Thing is what it's called, right? The Thing could be any single person in the base camp. And so when you see characters do things, you have to sort of ask yourself, is the motives of these characters from the character themselves? Like, is the reason they make these rash and hasty decisions because that character themselves, is it because that character themselves is having like a sort of panic attack, they're worried? Or is it because of a hidden motive, because it's not actually the character, it's the thing? And so I'll definitely have to look back, especially since I've now seen the film in its entirety. I'll definitely have to look back and be like, so maybe it was the thing that was doing that and not actually the character. But yeah, I think this is definitely rewatchable. I even saw, actually, I think the first time I really wanted, or the first time I really wanted to see this film was when I saw this interview by Bong Joon-ho when he was promoting Mickey 17. I believe it was on the Stephen Colbert Show. And he was talking about the thing, and him and Stephen, they were going back on theories. And I believe Bong said his theory was that Kurt Russell was the thing. And so I found that to be very interesting. And so I kept that in mind while I was watching the film. And, each character has their moments where you think it's them. And then there are other moments where you're like, oh, well, it can't be them. And so I love how this movie just plays with your mind, And I just think it's cool that incredible auteur like Bong Joon-ho. By the way, check out Mickey 17 if you haven't already. It's an incredible film. But I just love how other auteurs, I just like it when they just commend or praise and give approval to other filmmakers' films. I just think it's really nice, when you give appreciation to another person's work, because apparently The Thing has inspired lots of other films in like the present day. This has really gone on to inspire like a huge assortment of horror films and sci-fi films. So The Thing has really been the foundation for a lot of filmmakers' ideas and such for this new generation, which is really, really cool. A similarity, speaking of new generation and present day, a similarity that myself and a lot of other, I guess, audience members on Letterboxd sort of agreed with was it's kind of similar to Among Us. It's essentially a guessing game, who done it, sort of murder mystery. But again, that's what I love about this film. Everyone's guessing, you're always on your toes, can't trust anybody. So I really like that. Okay, and so my favorite scene now. My favorite scene would definitely be the blood testing scene. It's basically when Kurt Lancaster, he's testing the blood of everybody, and he's testing it. Again, this is a spoiler, but it's a 1982 film, so it doesn't really matter, I guess. But he's testing the blood against copper, and there's so much tension in this scene and so much suspense. It's just a masterful from John Carpenter. It makes me want to watch his other, of course, well-renowned film, The Halloween, which I believe came out before The Thing. So I gotta watch Halloween soon. But yeah, I think John Carpenter, what he does very well is he knows how to work the camera very well. You know, he knows how to add suspension. He has the camera linger on people's facial expressions very nicely. And he does it in a way where everybody feels like a victim, you know, even though you know that one of them or multiple of them might be the thing, you know, they might be the villain. Everybody is a victim, and he portrays them so like it's a very humanistic sort of touch that he puts on this. And you know, everyone's not only a victim to the parasite, but a victim to their own morality and to their own sort of greed and power and dishonesty, you know, and all of these things that are wrong with society in general. So that was really nice. Okay, and then now, I guess, sort of going towards the ending of the film, so throughout this film, I would say the decision making by the characters has been very nice. You know, with most horror films, the most like common thing is that they'll just, you know, explore things that they don't need to explore. Which, to be fair, when this happens in the film, when they explore things, I think it is for good reason. But anyways, yeah, this film, like, as for horror films, as they like what am I trying to say? I think as for horror films go, the decision making is very nice. Nobody's making that many stupid decisions in this film. That being said, towards the end, this is a spoiler. Null, I believe, is the name. He's like one of the last 3 survivors. For some reason, he sort of makes a dumb decision. Like, he notices that I forget the other character's name, but he notices that person's gone, and instead of calling Kurt Lancaster, not Kurt Lancaster, I was combining the names. Kurt Russell, whose character's name is what's the name? McReady, by the way, or Mac. Instead of calling Mac for help, like, hey, something weird's going on, he just explores it by himself. You know, even though he knows that this parasite is looming, the thing is looming around, in the form of the doctor, as they know. Or was it the doctor or was it scientist? I don't know. It was the guy that was locked in the shed. But he just explores it by himself. And we don't really know the fate of that character, except I presume he was dead. But then I looked at the novel, and apparently there's a more explicit description of what happens to Null. Apparently he actually commits suicide, similar to another character before in the movie. But I don't know. I feel like the novel did his character, or did the ending of that character, more justice than whatever the film did with him, because he's just walking, and then he just sort of disappears. And I felt like all the way the characters went in this film, they all went, I never had a problem with it, but no, I thought it was a bit weird. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the only issue or irk I had. But the ending overall, beautiful, ambiguous ending, very nice. It really just speaks on, the futility of trust. Where with Keith David and Kurt Russell in the very end, we don't know who the thing is. I think my theory, the thing is Keith David, in my opinion. Because he said, I was searching for the scientist doctor dude, the guy that was locked in the shed. Oh, I was searching for him and I got lost in a snowstorm. It's like, really? And also, someone pointed this out on Letterboxd. The line that Keith David's character says is, I believe he says to Kurt Russell, "Are you the only one that's left?" And so people found that interesting because he didn't say, "Are we the only one that's left?" He said, "Are you the only one that's left?" So yeah, I definitely think Keith David is the thing. That's my theory. But yeah, again, very beautiful ending. Again, speaks to the, humanity, futility of trust, miscommunication, dishonesty, the flaws of human nature, and what I love about this film, again, because we don't know much about the characters, they just have to learn to trust themselves. And so that trust diminishes throughout the film. People turn on each other, people make rash decisions. Very, very nice. One question I do have, though, and I've been thinking about this a lot, even though I'm assuming the reason this was never brought up is because they didn't know much about each other. But my question is, does the Thing, the parasite creature, does the Thing know every minute detail about the person they transform to? Like when they transform, because of course how it works, it's like metamorphosis. They transform into the person, you know? And so you're sort of guessing like, oh my God, is that the Thing? Is that the actual person? But like when they transform, do they like have their memories, and you know, do they have like, do they know everything about that person, like when they were born, you know, their hobbies, their tastes, disinterests? Because then they could have just been like, hey, you, McReady, when's your birthday? Or you, Null, what's your favorite food to eat? Like, maybe they could have just like quizzed them. I know it's a bit boring, but like I don't know if that was explored in the novel. But I didn't really see it explored in the film, because I feel like they could have just quizzed each other. And maybe instead of doing the whole blood copper test thing, they could have just, I don't know, quizzed each other and exposed the parasite that way. But I don't know, maybe it's because they don't know much about each other. But yeah, anyways, this is a timeless horror film that really keeps you hooked throughout. And again, it's not even horror. There's sci-fi, there's adventure, there's mystery, thriller. This really encompasses everything. And it's a shame that this film did not receive the praise that it deserved back in 1982. But I'm glad it does now. It's one of the highest rated films on Letterboxd. I think it has like 4.4, which is crazy. But timeless masterpiece. The dog, to be honest, in the very beginning should have gotten an Oscar, at least an Oscar nomination, because it was very nice. I don't know how they trained the dogs to act certain ways, but it must have taken a lot of effort. But yeah, anyways, this film gets a 9 out of 10. Really, really appreciate it, and thank you for listening to this review. Hope you enjoyed.